හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday, the 1st of February 2024. Undeterred, health sector trade unions to continue their island-wide strike until a favourable response from the government. Military personnel deployed today to continue hospital operations. Controversial. Speaker endorses the online safety bill. The new law effective from today. Violation. Constitutional Council is duty-bound to facilitate the appointment of the Inspector General of Police, says the President's Media Division. Port development. The US to assist in the development of the Colombo port. Ports Minister highlights the need for changing the country's economic landscape.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana First at 9. I'm Haritha Silva joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story tonight, health sector trade unions once again launched a strike action in demand of the DAT allowance, which led to disruptions in hospitals island-wide. In response, the government deployed the military to hospitals, heeding the call made by the Ministry of Health requesting the government's assistance to avoid the inconvenience caused to patients island-wide. Previously, on the 16th of January, a token strike was initiated by health sector trade unions over the same concerns, which was subsequently called off once the union received an assurance that a solution would be provided to their demands. However, claiming that the government did not offer an opportunity to discuss the matter with the President as previously assured, the health sector trade unions launched today's protest.
72 health sector trade unions engaged in a token strike on the 16th of January, demanding the 35,000 rupee disturbance, availability and transport allowance or DAT, which is currently offered to doctors exclusively. The token strike was called off on the assurance that a solution will be provided to the demands made upon President Ranil Wickremesinghe's arrival to the island following his overseas visit. However, the said 72 health sector trade unions launched a strike at 6:30 am today, stating that no discussion was arranged with the President in this regard as promised. The Health Services Trade Unions Alliance pointed out that around 100,000 employees joined today's strike. As such, employees engaged in the strike include medical laboratory scientists, radiologists, audiologists, as well as physical and occupational therapists. Outpatient and residential treatment services were halted due to the strike and patients were greatly inconvenienced. In the meantime, army personnel were deployed to all government hospitals at the request of the Ministry of Health to curb any inconvenience caused to the public. Further, doctors who reported to work as usual treated patients seeking medical assistance.
හදිසි ප්‍රතිකාර සේවාවන් පවත්වාගෙන එකඟ වෙලා තියෙනවානේ. හැබැයි හදිසිය ගන්න එක්ස්රේ එක මොකද්ද? හදිසිය ගන්න CT එක මොකද්ද කියලා තීරණය කරන්නේ මේ එක්ස්රේ ගන්න මහත්තුරු ටික. වෛද්‍යවරයෙක් තීරණය කරන්න ඕන දේ අවසානයේදී මේ එක්ස්රේ ගන්න මහත්තයෙක් කියනවා නෑ මේ රෝගියාට ගන්න ඕනේ මේ එක්ස්රේ එක. එහෙම තීරණය කරන්න බෑ. එහෙම අයිතියක් නැහැ. එහෙම දැනුමක් නැහැ මේ කණ්ඩායම වල. මොකද ඒක තමයි අපි කියන්නේ මේ හරහා ලබා දෙන්නේ වැරදි පූර්වාදර්ශයක්.
Since hospital dispensaries did not distribute medicines today, long queues were seen at the government-run Osasala pharmacies. However, children's hospitals, all cancer hospitals, maternity hospitals, nephrology hospitals and the Central Blood Bank were not affected by the strike action. In the meantime, a protest was launched in front of the Apeksha hospital during the lunch hour. As protests raged on, the Health Services Trade Union Alliance revealed their upcoming plans.
යමෙක් හිතනවා නම් තනි අතින් අප්පුඩි ගහන්න පුළුවන් කියලා අපිට පෙන්වන්න පුළුවන් තනි අතින් අප්පුඩි ගහන්න බෑයි කියලා. ඔබ දිනාගත්ත දේ දිනාගෙන අනෙක් අයට ගන්න දෙන්නේ නැතුව කැනහිලිකන් නොකර නිශ්ශබ්දව ඉන්න. මේ අවස්ථාවේදී අපි ඉල්ලන්නේ අපිට හිමි දෙයක්.
මේ වර්ධන ක්‍රියාමාර්ග නතර කර ගැනීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් සාධනීය මැදිහත් වීමක් මේ වෙනකන් ලැබිලා නැහැ. ඒ නිසා අපිට සිද්ධ වෙනවා මේ වර්ධන ක්‍රියාමාර්ගය තවදුරටත් ඉදිරියට ගෙනියන්න. මේකෙදී මහ ජනතාවට සිද්ධ වෙන සියලු අහිතකර ප්‍රතිඵලවල වගකීම 100%ක්ම රජය සහ සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය බාර ගන්නට ඕනේ.
Now, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Lanka IOC and Sinopec Energy revised the prices of their petroleum products with effect from midnight yesterday. Following the fuel price revision, the private bus owners demanded a 10% revision in bus fares before the 15th of February and added that the failure to meet that demand will lead to a strike action in the near future. However, the National Transport Commission stated that bus fares will remain unchanged despite the fuel price revision.
As per the fuel price revision announced by the state fuel supplier Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, a litre of 92-octane petrol increased by 5 rupees to 371 rupees. A litre of 95-octane petrol, however, was reduced by 8 rupees to 456 rupees per litre. The price of auto diesel was increased by 5 rupees per litre to 363 rupees, while the price of a litre of super diesel was reduced to 468 rupees per litre by 7 rupees per litre with effect from midnight yesterday. The price of kerosene meanwhile increased by 26 rupees to 262 rupees per litre. Following the fuel price revision by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Lanka IOC also increased fuel prices in line with the new Sepetco prices. Meanwhile, revising their fuel prices, Chinese fuel supplier Sinopec Energy Lanka increased the price of a litre of its 92-octane petrol to 361 rupees by 5 rupees per litre. A litre of 95-octane petrol was reduced by 8 rupees to 456 rupees. Auto diesel was increased by 5 rupees to 360 rupees per litre, while super diesel was reduced by 7 rupees to 468 rupees per litre. Following the fuel price hike, the Private Bus Owners Association demanded an increase in bus fares.
වහාම ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන පරිදි හෙට හෝ අනිද්දා දිනේදී බස් ගාස්තු සංශෝධනයක් වහාම ලබා දෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ බස් ගාස්තු සංශෝධනය තුල ගැප් වෙලා තියෙන්න ඕනේ. රුපියල් 30ක්ව පවතින අවම බස් ගාස්තුව රුපියල් 33 34 සීමාව පසු කර යන්න ඕනේ.
අපි යෝජනා කරනවා ඉදිරියේදී පෙබරවාරි 15 වෙනිදා වන විට 10%ක බස් ගාස්තුවක් අනිවාර්යෙන් සංශෝධනය වී යුතුයි. ඒ වගේම අවම ගාස්තුව රුපියල් 35ක් විය යුතුයි කියලා.
However, the National Transport Commission said the bus fares will remain unchanged. The Three-Wheel Drivers Association meanwhile said their fare prices will remain unchanged.
මෙවර රුපියල් 5කින් පෙට්‍රල් මිල ඉහළ ගිය නිසා මෙතෙක් පැවති ගාස්තුව අපි සතයකින්වත් වෙනස් කරන්නේ නැහැ, සංශෝධනය කරන්නේ නැහැ, වැඩි කරන්නේ නැහැ.
Now in other news, Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Abeyewardene endorsed the highly controversial online safety bill, making the new law effective from today. According to the Sri Lankan government, the online safety bill aims to ban online communication of certain statements in the country, prevent the use of online accounts, both authentic and inauthentic, for the use of prohibited purposes, to suppress the financing and support of communication of false statements and other related matters.
The controversial online safety bill was passed in Parliament with amendments on the 24th of January amid strong objection by the opposition, civil society groups and industry stakeholders. This morning, Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Abeyewardene endorsed the online safety bill, making the new law effective from today onwards. According to its long title, the online safety bill aims to establish the Online Safety Commission, make provisions to prohibit online communication of certain statements of fact in Sri Lanka, prevent the use of online accounts and inauthentic online accounts for prohibited purposes, make provisions to identify and declare online locations used for prohibited purposes in Sri Lanka, suppress the financing and other support of communication of false statements of fact and for matters connected. In a statement in October last year, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights stated many sections of the bill contain vaguely defined terms and definitions of offences which leave significant room for arbitrary and subjective interpretation and could potentially criminalise nearly all forms of legitimate expression, creating an environment that has a chilling effect on freedom of expression. In a statement last week, the Asia Internet Coalition stated they unequivocally stand by their position that the online safety bill in its current form is unworkable and would undermine potential growth and foreign direct investment into Sri Lanka's digital economy. They are under the belief that for the bill to align with global best practices, extensive revisions are imperative. The Amnesty International meanwhile stated the passing of the Online Safety Act is a major blow to human rights in Sri Lanka and added the act is the newest weapon in the government's arsenal of tools that could be used to undermine freedom of expression and suppress dissents.
Meanwhile, parliamentarian of the Samak Janabalawege, Dr. Haritha Silva, highlighted that the approved online safety bill attacks the very foundation of democracy in Sri Lanka. In the meantime, independent parliamentarian Dallas Alhaperuma stated that the damage caused through the online safety bill must be thoroughly understood.
අපි බොහොම පැහැදිලිව කියනවා නීතිපතිවරයා අනුමත කරලා දුන්නා නම් ඒ සංශෝධන ටික සෑම මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක්ගේම මේසුවට මේක තියෙන්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි එහෙම නැතුව මේ සම්බන්ධව දිගින් දිගටම ප්‍රශ්න කරපුවාම මේ රටේ කතානායකවරයා ඔහුගේ ස්වාධීනත්වය පැත්තකට විසිකලා ක්‍රියා කරලා තියෙනවා.
කතානායකවරයාගේ කාර්යාලයෙන් පුත් කරලා තියෙනවා නිවේදනයක් ඔන්ලයින් සේෆ්ටි පනත සම්මත වුණා කියලා පින්තූරයක දාලා තියෙනවා. එතුමා හිනහ වෙලා මේ පනත සම්මත කරනවා. ඊට හිනහ වෙන නෙමෙයි කනකාටු වෙන්න ඕන කාරණාවක්. මොකද අපේ රටේ ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදයට දැවැන්ත පහරක් තමයි අද ඉඳලා ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන නීතියෙන් එල්ල වෙන්නේ.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ඉදිරිපත් කරපු පනත. එතකොට මේ කොමිෂන් සභාව පත් කරන්නේ කවුද? ජනාධිපතිවරයා. එතකොට මොන තීන්දුව දුන්නත් තීන්දුව ලැබිච්ච පාර්ශවයට අයිතියක් නැහැ කිසිම අධිකරණයකට කියලා මේක ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න. මෙවැනි පනත් ඇතුලේ වෙන්න පුළුවන් අනතුරු කරුණාකරලා තේරුම් ගන්න.
Now, Treasury Secretary Mahinda Siriwardena says that the state-owned enterprise sector of the country currently employs around 18% of the total government labour force, which could be more productively employed elsewhere in competitive business settings such as in exports. Addressing a gathering yesterday, Siriwardena said that there are non-strategic SOEs that need to be critically evaluated under the current restructuring process. Meanwhile, the head of the state-owned enterprise restructuring unit, Suresh Shah, outlined there are few main issues plaguing Sri Lanka's SOEs, from abuse of SOE assets during election years to lost circulation between the biggest SOEs of Sri Lanka need to be addressed.
A seminar under the theme Enhancing the Efficiency of State-Owned Enterprises, organised by the Organisation of Professional Associations, was held yesterday in Colombo.
SOEs employ around 212,000 individuals. That is around 18% of the total employed by the government, and is indicative of the significant usage of labour resources by state enterprises. In some cases, the use of scarce labour resources in state enterprises is socially optimal. However, in many cases, labour would be more productively employed in sectors such as competitive private sector exporters. Is it socially optimal for the government to retain its investment in a hotel, or to divest that investment and use the proceeds for upgrading the public education sector? Is one of the questions that we can ask. This question applies to both profit-making and loss-making entities. Even a profit-making entity is not an optimal investment of taxpayer funds if the return on investment is lower than the government's borrowing cost. The proceeds can be used to invest in public education or healthcare provisions instead of raising funds at 13% to fulfill the same objective, thereby creating a net saving of 8% for the taxpayer of the country. In some situations, there are legitimate strategic considerations for government ownership of SOEs that may trump financial considerations. However, in Sri Lanka, there are many non-strategic state enterprises where state ownership should be critically evaluated on financial terms. The objective of the ongoing reforms and restructuring of state-owned enterprises is to eliminate or at least minimize the losses and inefficiencies of SOEs whilst preserving the positive socio-economic impact with a view to optimizing returns to society and reduce fiscal risks. In the past, successive governments have mixed up policy objectives by trying to adhere welfare objectives through price controls of essential goods and services to shield the poor from price fluctuations. However, Sri Lanka's recent experience shows such policies end up being unsustainable. In the new policy framework, the government intends to achieve its welfare objectives through targeted direct cash transfers to poor and the vulnerable communities, which can cushion the impact of price shocks. This enables essential goods and services such as electricity and fuel to be sustainably priced as cost-effective levels, thereby ensuring the financial stability of the enterprises whilst avoiding added stress on the banking system and fiscal position of the country.
We identified a few significant challenges. The first challenge was the subsidy. The subsidies being parked in these commercial enterprises, whether it was a CPC or whether it was a state banks, but parking subsidies in commercial enterprises we believe was a fundamental challenge. Secondly, appointment of board, appointment of SOE board. Now we all know SOE board appointments is not because the directors have the experience, qualifications or the capacity, but it is more because whom they know or who they are related. So this was the second biggest challenge challenge that we identified in terms of how the SOE sector was managed. Thirdly, we identified that these SOEs created jobs which were non-existent. So if an entity needed 100 people, it ended up having 150. If it needed 1,000 people, it ended up having 1,250, and so on and so on. So they created jobs that were non-existent. That was the third challenge. The fourth challenge was that these SOE assets were misused, particularly during election time. People were used to paste posters, vehicles were used for election campaigns, and so on and so forth. And of course, through the procurement system, there were other challenges as well. And the fifth challenge was this whole circular issue that ST spoke of. CPC, Sri Lankan Airlines, state banks, that whole circularized, that entire circular issue. So we said if the state-owned enterprise sectors are to be properly managed going forward in a sustainable way, in a productive way, in a way that these enterprises will no longer be a burden on the fiscal operations of government, then these 5 things have to be addressed.
Now bringing to you more news on the SOE front, the State Enterprise Restructuring Unit has decided to once again extend the period for submission of proposals for the restructuring of Sri Lankan Airlines. Accordingly, this is the third time that the period for calling for aspirations has been extended since the start of the Sri Lankan Airlines privatization process. As an important step forward in the government's economic reform program, the call for proposals for the purchase of shares in the airline was made on the 31st of October last year, and the last date for the calling for proposals was the 5th of December. However, due to the lack of sufficient attraction, the State Enterprise Restructuring Unit decided to extend the call for proposals for Sri Lankan Airlines to the December 5th and then to January 9th this year. Accordingly, it is reported that it has now been extended for the third time until the 5th of March this year. Now in other news, the President's Media Division says the Constitutional Council refraining from performing its functions regarding the appointment of the Inspector General of the Police would be a violation of the Constitution. In a statement, the PMD stated that the Constitutional Council is duty-bound to perform its functions enshrined in the Constitution.
In a statement, the President's Media Division stated, the President of Sri Lanka under Article 4B of the Constitution is the organ of the government through which the executive power of the people, including the defence of Sri Lanka, is exercised. It stated the President as the head of the executive is duty-bound to make certain appointments to high officers, including the Inspector General of Police, according to the procedure stipulated by the Constitution and in line with the President's constitutional duty to exercise powers pertaining to the defence of Sri Lanka. While highlighting that the President must perform his constitutional duties without any impediment or interference, under Article 41C of the Constitution, the appointment of the Inspector General of Police is carried out subsequent to a recommendation made by the President to the Constitutional Council and on the approval of such recommendation by the Constitutional Council. Any restraint placed on the President in the performance of his constitutional duty would be in contravention of the Constitution, and added if the President exercises his powers contrary to the Constitution, the remedies available have been provided for in the Constitution itself. The statement noted the Constitutional Council, which is chaired by the Speaker of Parliament and established under the Constitution, has been empowered to assist the President in the making of certain decisions and is part of the executive. While highlighting that the Constitutional Council is duty-bound to perform its functions in terms of the Constitution, the statement stated requiring the Constitutional Council to refrain from performing its functions pertaining to the appointment of the Inspector General of Police under Article 41C of the Constitution would be in violation of the Constitution. If the Constitutional Council exercises the power conferred on it in violation of the Constitution, remedies have been provided for in the Constitution itself. Further, the Speaker is the head of Parliament, and under Article 4C of the Constitution, the Parliament exercises the judicial power of the people through courts, and added that the Parliament is therefore responsible only to the people. The statement noted that the President will refer these matters to the Parliament for further elucidation.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Haritha Silva highlights that ports, shipping, aviation and tourism can be cornerstones of Sri Lanka's economy, while emphasizing the crucial need to change the country's economic landscape. He further went on to say that digitizing all sectors under the vision of President Ranil Wickremesinghe is not an easy task and called upon professionals to aid in that process. Meanwhile, US Ambassador in Colombo, Julie Chung, claims that the US expects to see Sri Lanka's ports prepared for success as it expands to meet the growing demands of the global economy.
The Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Aviation announced that the US government donated $1.5 million for the development of human resources in Sri Lanka's port sector. The donation was provided by the Colombo Plan under the financial support of the United States. Under this financial initiative, for a span of 3 years, foreign scholarships will be provided to the officers and employees engaged in the operations and technical divisions of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority to improve their professional skills. As such, a memorandum of understanding was signed yesterday in the presence of Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Haritha Silva, and the US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chung.
Port, aviation, tourism are some of the very vibrant areas which our economy can be built upon. So therefore, it is very necessary that the landscape of this country, the economic landscape of Sri Lanka, has to be changed to suit the modern world and the international perceptions. Luckily, we have a leader with a vision who take very bold decisions, not looking for political advantages, but his vision is to make this country prosperous with the correct policies and programs. That is His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe. The Colombo port has transformed itself to a modern port. I am very happy that you have come out now in most of the ports in the if you go to Dubai or Singapore or any other, all your ports in US, you have this port community system. So really we need assistance in that area because the vision of the President Ranil Wickremesinghe for a digitalized Sri Lanka, so we are digitalizing all the sectors. So that is not easy because we need the professionals, we need the new technology, we need cyber security. All those areas has to be looked upon. So therefore, we cannot do this in isolation.
The US government is teaming up with the Colombo Plan to expand human resources, the knowledge, the technical skill set, and expertise of SLPA's engineers, port engineers, managers, and other operational staff. The goal of this initiative is to provide professional training on current trends, technological advancements, and best practices in the ports management field, and expose the XLPA staff to the latest international standards and best practices. We want to see Sri Lanka's ports be prepared and to be successful as it expands to meet the growing demands of the global economy.
Now, the Colombo Stock Exchange gained at close today, boosted by gains in the banking sector counters. The CSE All Share Index closed 0.63% higher at 10,375.72 points, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 gained 1.27 points to close at 2,933.30 points. Sampath Bank, Commercial Bank and DFCC Bank were the top gainers on the index, gaining 2.79% and 2.2% and 3.45% respectively. Trading volume on the CSE All Share Index gained 41.1 million shares from 29.8 million shares in the previous session. Equity market turnover fell to about 1.14 billion rupees from 695.8 million rupees as the banking sector was the top contributor today, while the diversified financial sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 164.3 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 1.04 billion rupees. Now let's take a look at the rupee exchange rates during the day. Now in some international business news, Facebook founder and billionaire Mark Zuckerberg apologized to families at a US Senate hearing about the impact that social media has on children. Under prodding from Republican Senator Josh Hawley, Zuckerberg stood up and addressed families who held up pictures of their children who they said had been harmed by social media. As the hearing kicked off, the committee played a video in which children spoke about being bullied on social media platforms. Senators recounted stories of young people taking their own lives after being extorted online for money.
37% of teenage girls between 13 and 15 were exposed to unwanted nudity in a week on Instagram. You knew about it. Who did you fire?
I'm not going to answer that.
Because you didn't fire anybody, right? You didn't take any significant action.
It's appropriate to talk about like individual
it's not appropriate.
HR decisions.
Do you know who's sitting behind you? You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone, and you don't think it's appropriate to talk about steps that you took? The fact that you didn't fire a single person? Let me ask you this. Have you compensated any of the victims? These girls, have you compensated them?
I don't believe so.
Why not? Don't you think they deserve some compensation for what your platform has done? Help with counseling services, help with dealing with the issues that your services caused?
Our job is to make sure that we build tools to keep people safe.
Are you going to compensate them? So let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? They're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures.
I'm sorry for everything that you've all been through. Terrible knowing that to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
Now in your corporate updates, an anti-leprosy campaign was conducted in the Western Province under the guidance and direction of the Provincial Director of Health Services of the Western Province in partnership with Hemas Pharmaceuticals. Informative leaflets spreading awareness on leprosy were distributed among the public during the awareness campaign. Commercial Bank meanwhile celebrated 16 years of successful CommBank GoldNet system operations. With that, let's take a look at our corporate news segment for the evening.
Commemorating the World Leprosy Day 2024 held last Sunday, Hemas Pharmaceuticals together with the Anti-Leprosy Campaign, Provincial Director of Health Western Province, Regional Director of Health Services of Colombo, Gampaha and Kaluturu districts and the MOH offices in the Western Province joined forces to conduct a wide-reaching awareness campaign. Through the collaborative effort, informative flyers were distributed to over 50,000 individuals at key high-traffic transportation hubs, including train and bus stations. Taking the recent unforeseen rise in leprosy in the country into account, Hemas Pharmaceuticals and the Anti-Leprosy Campaign decided to leverage this day to make a tangible impact on leprosy awareness within Sri Lanka. In the meantime, the Commercial Bank of Ceylon celebrated 16 years of successful operations of the CommBank GoldNet system, the bank's payment card services platform, which currently hosts 6 domestic banks and financial institutions as well as the country's 2 leading telecommunications service providers. Commercial Bank launched GoldNet in 2007 to provide cards-related services to banks and financial institutions in Sri Lanka. Over the years, the GoldNet system has processed millions of payment card transactions with 99.9% uptime, helping member banks and financial institutions to provide a convenient payment experience to their customers. In other corporate news, Maxim Impressions Lanka, a subsidiary company of Maxim Smart Manufacturing Company Limited, bagged the Gold Award in the large-scale category at the National Industry Excellence Awards 2023, organised by the Industrial Development Board. Since its establishment, Maxim has been offering brand identity protection and information technology solutions to retailers and major brands in the world. Maxim Impressions Lanka's team is experienced in providing design solutions to create products from conceptual development to product realization.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's English News Bulletin. Stay with us tomorrow. Thank you. Have a great day.